Hi guys, this time I am reviewing the Loki Agent of Asgard comics, particularly Volume 1, Trust Me, with the first 5 issues, 5 original comics, and also the all-new Marvel Now .1 number 1. All of these comics are written by Al Ewing and illustrated by Lee Garbett. So our hero in these comics is Loki. I am so excited. I love Loki. He is my favorite Marvel character. He's my favorite character in the movies and in the comics. In these comics, Loki has reinvented himself again. There used to be a kid Loki who was kind of a rebirthed Loki to begin with, I guess. I haven't read the comics that come before this, so I'm not exactly sure. Our Loki, this young adult Loki, has killed the previous kid Loki so that he can reinvent himself again. And I'm totally confused by that because I haven't read those comics and clearly I need to. But basically, young Loki, this our Loki, is guilt ridden by this, and that's what you need to know about that. Or all I needed to know about that. So we have a Loki who is trying to reinvent himself and become good. So Loki starts off as the god of mischief, the god of chaos, the prince of lies. He's always the villain to Thor's good guy. And he's done this for so long and for so many centuries that he has actually dug himself the hole and he's known as the god of evil. So this new Loki wants to wipe his slate clean and kind of start over and get a whole new life for himself. So Loki's made a deal with his mother Freya and the other 2 members of the Triumvirate that are ruling Asgard, and he will do missions for them in exchange for wiping clean his past transgressions. So for every mission he accomplishes for Asgard, they will strike one of his old misdeeds from the records as if they never happened. If Loki does enough of these, he will eventually have a clean slate and be free and good and stuff. In theory, what the Triumvirate really wants is for Loki to bring home these wayward Asgardians who are living on Midgard, aka Earth, and to bring them home, which seems kind of like an easy task to do, except that Loki is living on Earth and doesn't particularly want to go back to Asgard, for one thing. And another thing, the people they want him to bring back are some of his friends, like Lorelei, a past lover, and Sigurd, who is Asgard's first hero. So these don't necessarily sit well with Loki. So a lot of these stories are just him kind of figuring out who he is in his new life. And he's not so sure that the All-Mother is all-knowing and wise and perfect. So besides Lorelei and Sigurd, the other major characters that factor into this are his brother Thor, obviously. What is Thor without Loki, and Loki without Thor? But also he's met a human lie detector named Verity Willis, and Verity can see through any lie. Since she was a kid, nobody's ever been able to lie to her. She can see through fiction. She cannot suspend her disbelief to watch a movie. She knows when her parents are telling her white lies, like the only kid who didn't believe in Santa Claus. So her life is really complicated and she has trust issues. Not because she doesn't know if you're lying or not, but because she does know when you're lying, and that's creepy, basically. So Loki, the Prince of Lies, actually just tells it to her straight. He's intrigued by this woman who sees through the illusion he's wearing and notices that he is a crazy person wearing horns on his head and not looking dapper in a suit, basically. Loki just kind of hits it off and they become friends, and it's awesome. And I love Verity. She is so cool. So the villain in these comics, since Loki is the good guy, actually kind of ends up partly being the All-Mother and partly being Loki. So there is a future Loki, a Loki from the end of days Loki, from a far and distant future, where like the world is like collapsing and stuff, and Midgard is in ruins. So we have a King Loki from the end of days, King of Midgard. Loki finally manages to conquer Earth somehow. And this Loki wants to go back and make sure that this future where he rules Earth happens. And to do this, he needs to stop himself from becoming good, because he can only rule Earth if he's the villain and the bad guy, basically. Loki, always the genius, always the trickster, always the one who's one step ahead of everybody, is now faced with himself and like trying to think ahead of himself, a future self who knows what he's going to do because he's already done it self, kind of thing. So the main theme in this comic is what is right and wrong versus what good and evil looks like, and also things like truth and lies. Like, truth and lies play a huge part into this, especially since Loki's main weapon is Ram, the Sword of Truth. So if you stab somebody with that, they can't lie. And the person wielding the sword is the guy who lies to practically everybody. So we have that kind of juxtaposition going on between truth and lies, and you also have Verity who can see through any lies. So that becomes a major theme in this. Obviously there's good and evil. We have Loki trying to reinvent himself, going from the god of evil to becoming a good hero, becoming a good character, becoming a hero. And then stories and what stories mean and stories are used and how they play out and what they do to our psyches and why we need them. So storytelling becomes its own theme, and it is epic, and I love that. Yeah, so like we have the past, the present, and the future also kind of get muddled in these comics. So you have future Loki and present Loki, and what Loki's done in the past are all playing into it. But the stories aren't necessarily told chronologically either. So we're kind of jumping around in the stories to how it tells better. These comics are really fun too. Like, it's really humorous, and like the antics, and there's still mischief in this. Like, Loki is still the god of mischief, no doubt. He's the shapeshifter and the trickster and the liar. But how and why he's using those skills shifts because he's trying to be the good guy and the hero, which is awesome to see. I love the way they use magic in this, like, especially the shape shifting bit, because Loki can become a girl, so he is completely gender fluid, I guess, in the way that he can just completely change, and it's awesome. I love female Loki. I love Lady Loki. She is brilliant. It's great. I love it. I love that Loki also just kind of owns parts of himself that maybe aren't necessarily seen as the best things. His ability to trick people and lie and steal and all those things, and he just is like, that's my skill, and owns it, and it's fantastic. Definitely deceptions and lies show up as a theme in this comic. And also kind of how we create our own, like how destiny plays out is a big part of this too. There's a lot of what everybody expects, what the story says is going to happen, and what happens and how it plays out. So the art in these comics are also really awesome. I love the coloring and the lines and the way it's drawn, and I'm not very technical at that art stuff, but it looks very pretty. I thoroughly appreciate it. I love the art. It's vibrant and colorful without being crazy and distracting. So props. I love Loki as a character because he can be everything and anything. Like, he's not bound by morals, I guess. Like, nothing's stopping Loki from being anything he wants to be, and he owns that and knows what he wants and goes for it, whether he's being the villain or the hero, and that is what I love about Loki. And this comic explores that and captures that so well. If you look at like Norse mythology, Loki isn't the god of evil. He isn't the bad guy. He's just what is. Like, chaos exists and mischief, and it's not a bad thing. And this comic, I think, particularly, like, this set of comics brings that out and explores that way more than especially the earlier comics where Loki's just the bad guy. And especially getting to see, like, that struggle, I think, with Thor and Loki, because Loki's changed and can't remember. Like, Loki says he doesn't remember ever hating Thor, but Thor remembers fighting Loki and Loki being the bad guy. Like, they both remember that they were enemies, but Loki's changed, and so the dynamic between Thor and Loki is also changing. And I love Loki developing, like, actual friend that he can trust and talk to and tell everything to, because she sees through any lies. He doesn't have the option to lie to her, which forces some interesting characteristics to come out of him. Like, he has somebody he actually can trust and trust him back. Sort of. He's still Loki, though. So it's still not 100%, but it's like, Loki's usually out there on his own, completely separate from everybody else. So to see him have somebody he depends on, it adds a different dimension to the comics and it makes them more interesting. With Lorelei, we have this enchantress who's in a similar situation to him. So she has an older sister, Amora, who's generally decided to be better looking, like better skilled than her, kind of stuff. And Lorelei tried to also make her own way and stand out from her sister, and sometimes that means, being the trickster and lying and cheating and stealing. Like, she's this great con artist. And she also has a past with both Loki and Thor as, like, ex-lovers to both of them. And so when she appears, it kind of is fun, I guess. And we have Sigurd, who's Asgard's great hero, but he's not necessarily like the I'm always right and virtuous and good kind of hero. Some of what he does is kind of sketchy on the down low kind of stuff. So this great hero of Asgard isn't really necessarily that great either. And I like that all these characters aren't straight one or the other. Like, they lean towards one, but maybe aren't completely. Like, they lead towards one end of the spectrum between good and evil, but aren't necessarily completely at one end. And so I feel like these comics really have more of a, like, everybody's motives are up in the air about whether they're gonna fall on the good or evil. Like, there isn't just good or evil in these comics. Like, that's a main theme in this, but it's not clear, straightforward stuff. And yeah, everybody has the light and dark in them. Even Thor has the light and dark in him. Even Freya has light and dark in her. Odin has the light and dark in him. And, like, people aren't cut and dry like that. And I love aren't cut and dry. Like, people aren't good or evil. So I really love this comic for that, especially since, yeah, that's always what I've loved most about Loki. And so I love these comics. Seriously love these comics, guys. They are awesome. So definitely go read Loki, Agent of Asgard. Seriously, these are my favorite comics, like, that I have found so far. It is amazing. I love it. I love you guys. Peace out and keep reading.